A very warm welcome to all of our viewers. This is Bibelstream from Germany, bringing to you special spiritual treats from the Holy Scriptures and from what God has done in the lives of those who are reading and studying them. My name is Kai Mester, and we have a special guests actually, in our studio tonight. It's David Gates, it's his wife Becky Gates, and yes, you are from, I think, the US, Bolivia, all over the place. Where are you from?
Actually, both of us were born in the United States, but our parents raised us in Bolivia, and we spent most of our adult lives working in South America, and now the last several years basically on every continent.
Okay. You're quite known maybe for some of our viewers. They have heard that you're managing several TV stations, but you're doing a lot of mission projects all over the world. Can you tell a little about the scope of what you're doing?
Well, the Lord has been good to us. My wife and I, we grew up together as children, and we knew each other as special friends. And we go back a long way because when I was 8 years old, I asked her to marry me. Okay. And she agreed, and she kept her promise. And 12 years later, we did actually get married in college and at the university, finished our studies, and then left for the mission field. And that was a little over 30 years ago, and we've been working for God in the mission field ever since. 15 years ago, I was teaching graduate business school for Andrews University down in the Caribbean at their extension program in computer science. And I came to the conclusion that there was a global financial crisis that was going to come in the near future. I didn't know when, but I knew it would come soon. And I needed to get ready. I needed more experience. I didn't know how God's work is supposed to go on when there's no resources unless God carries forward His work. So I talked to my wife, and we decided, let's do an experiment. And we'll talk more about that experiment a little later, but in summary, we took 1 year off to just live as volunteers with our 5 children in the jungles of Guyana, South America, and just let God provide for our needs and just trust God's word, only ask Him to provide for our needs and see if He could do that, because He promises to do that.
And you grew up also as a child of missionaries.
Yes.
And you also, isn't that true? And did that also contribute to the fact that you later decided also to become a missionary?
What impact did it have for you, Becky?
Definitely. I think for many missionaries, once it gets in your blood, it's there to stay. Okay. So definitely I wanted to be a missionary.
You grew up in Bolivia, is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And I mean, mission life is not easy. It has also some risks. I read in your book, and maybe I can show it here now. We have a book also in German. I have the German copy here about the story in the jungle also, and in Bolivia, and from childhood. This book is also talking about the risks, I think. For example,
Correct.
There's a chapter in it about prison. What have you experienced there?
Well, the first chapter is hijacked as a mission pilot. I've been blessed with the ability to fly most anywhere that we need to fly, and we have quite a few pilots working with us today in aircraft around the world and helicopters. But in that specific chapter, it talks about my hijacking in Mexico. I was working as a hospital administrator and a pilot, nurse, and mechanic. And as I was, one of those days, I suddenly found myself in an alternate runway because the other runway was filled with water. When I went to get the airplane, there were soldiers around the airplane. They asked me for questions, documents. I produced everything. I had all the documents in order. The plane had been operating there for over 10 years. And so I was happy to give them what they asked for. But the next thing I knew, they asked me to get in the airplane and flew me to an abandoned runway where I was blindfolded, handcuffed, along with the director of education. And then we were accused of 15 crimes against the state and thrown into a prison supposedly for 14 years for crimes that we didn't commit.
Okay, but
So
you
that
ended up being a shorter time there.
It ended up
obviously.
being shorter because God did a miracle. He put me to work. He said, I want you to take care of their physical needs, and I didn't want to do that. My wife had no idea where I was. I was depressed, but the Lord said, forget your depression and take care of what I'm asking you to do. And as I accepted the Lord's leading, He put me to work and doing medical work in the prison. I started seeing 50 patients a day. I didn't really want to, but the Lord asked me to do that, so I agreed. The prison director was quite impressed. I found several patients that needed immediate surgery. And he said, if only we could find some doctors that would be willing to come. And I said, you know, I'm a hospital administrator. If you could contact my hospital, I know the doctors would be willing to come. And so he said, there's the phone, give them a call. And that's when I made contact with my wife. She was happy to know I was still alive. A physician came, performed about 15 surgeries a day for several days, smaller surgeries, a major surgery. And then we brought in clothes and food, ADRA supplies, started taking care of prison needs. And the prison director said, you Adventists are the best thing that happened to my prison. And he went to the courthouse. He told them, these people are innocent. As a result, they did drop the charges, and we were able to go home 10 days.
Okay. So at that time, Becky, did you see your husband more often than now? I mean, not when he was in prison, of course. I mean, but at the time when you were there in South America and working in missions, was he also traveling a lot? I mean, you did aviation also at the time, didn't you?
Yes, he was doing medical aviation. He would pick up patients and bring them to the hospital. And so many times he would leave early in the morning and I would not see him till the evening. But he was pretty much at that time spending every night at home, which was a blessing.
Yeah, my question is at that point, Becky, how did you cope with this missionary life as a mother and you as a father? How could you bring that together to be a missionary and have a family? Because obviously both of it needs a lot of time.
Well, I am a nurse, but while my children were small, I felt like my children were my most important mission field. So while they were young, I stayed at home full-time with them. And the first few years of our ministry, David was at home quite a bit, at least in the evenings, like I said. And I really appreciated him that he always tried to take time to play with the kids, as well as, to have worships together. That was very important for us. And as the children grew up, got a little bit bigger, we just tried to make them part of the mission field. And we actually felt like it was a great advantage. For example, when we went to Guyana and lived in that little village, we sent our children to the local school that first year, just so that they could really integrate, and they became friends with all those children in the village, and it just helped all of us to really bond with that village. Up to now, I think that is my favorite place to live, and every time we go back to visit, everybody just runs back to say hello to us. We were Auntie Becky and Uncle David to all the children there, and they still call us that. It's been very special.
Nice. Are they already now in the age of being in college, or children?
Our 3 daughters are already married.
Okay.
2 of them already have 2 children apiece, so we have 4 grandchildren.
And some of them are still involved with your mission projects also? Do they have their own?
Actually, the 2 oldest daughters are working with directing ministries of ours. One is in Bolivia working with her husband in media, our oldest daughter. And then our next oldest daughter, she's working with her husband directing 3 medical launches in Brazil. And so both of them are nurses in Brazil. And so they work very well. We're delighted that to have 2 daughters. Our 3rd daughter is considering moving to the mission field full-time. She lives with her husband in Australia as he finishes his education. And we have 2 sons, which have just in the process of finishing their education, and they'll have to choose. They haven't made their choice yet. We're praying for them, that they might join us someday in full-time ministry.
Okay. So what I've heard now is that you have various projects. Some are aviation projects, some are medical, and some media Is there any other thing, education or?
Well, we got started first of all with the medical work. That's where we started 15 years ago in volunteer work. But we never could leave. The Lord blessed it so much, we just kept on going. And our one-year experiment turned out to be 15 years now. Then we added, so many villages wanted us to go to their village, but it was 4 days walking just to get there. And then you have to imagine 4 days walking back. And so I started praying for an airplane, and the Lord provided us with a small airplane. That was number one. Now we have 26 aircraft and one helicopter. And so that work has grown from medical aviation. Then we realized I needed schools. So we added secondary schools and a primary school, and today we have 15 schools. Then there was orphanages. So we have 2 orphanages. That expanded into I had a week of prayer at one university, and they said, Uncle David, why don't you work within big cities? And I said, well, I live in it with the Indians. I don't live in big cities. But the people in the big cities need help too. And so we began thinking of media project as possibility of reaching the cities. God did provide an opportunity, and what I wanted to do was start little and grow, but God launched us out into a nationwide network. At the beginning, in Bolivia, that became the first Spanish-speaking television network that the Adventist Church had. And today we have 14 television networks in 14 different languages, and in the process of, by the end of the year, this year, we expect to have 5 new networks on the air. Just yesterday, we started broadcasting all over Madrid, the first Adventist television station covering all of Madrid.
Very good. So the media work was the work that brought you into other countries outside of South America, is that right?
I would say that I was invited to Austria first to speak for ASI, and they just wanted to hear about the faith. The fact that you could actually operate with no salaries and no fixed budgets and just pray. That's what started opening the doors, and we spread out throughout countries in South America, then into the Caribbean, then Europe came on board, then from there Asia and Africa. But I would say the story of operating by faith, so many people struggle with resources, and I would say here in Germany, the mentality, the culture is have everything, in English we say all the ducks in a row.
Organized.
Everything organized ahead of time before you go. That's a very German mentality. But it's something that I don't know how to do if you don't have money. And so we just said, well, this is very uncomfortable for us to have everything ready and not know that Jesus sent his disciples out and said, don't take any money with you or clothes, that you will be provided
just
for. And so that's hard for our modern way of thinking. So we decided to try it. That's the only way to learn. And so far, it's been a tremendous success, but it isn't easy. It is always continually a very painful thing to just go out and have to struggle with, will it happen, will it not happen? What if God is late? What if he doesn't do it this time? Or, I know he did it last time, but what about this time? And am I doing God's will?
But I mean, obviously it has succeeded to a certain extent, because that's the reason why you're here now in Germany. There's Lightchannel TV. It is now on the air, I think, 2 years, is that right?
Yes, just a little over 2 years. We started out, we have a license to broadcast German issued by the Romanian government because of all the Germans that live in Romania. And we have a Hungarian license and a Romanian license also. And it's a license good for all of Europe because they're part of the European community. So Lightchannel eventually, because of the difficulty of producing German, they're moved here, and most of the production happens here. So Lightchannel German, Lightchannel Hungarian, Lightchannel Romanian, and Lightchannel Dutch now is on the air. Soon there will be Macedonian, Polish, Croatian, and Italian, and part of the Lightchannel family.
Yeah. So now when a young person wants to become a missionary, what would you suggest? What should he choose as... what should he study, or what kind of profession should he take? I mean, if I hear what you're doing, it seems to be kind of all round, or several professions. Obviously, you haven't studied each for 4 years or so, otherwise you would not be out there doing so many things. What would you suggest to young people? How should they tackle this, and how should they decide?
What would you suggest, Becky, for a young lady?
Well, I think after they have finished high school, I don't know here in Germany exactly how your educational system is set up, but before you go into the university, if you would take off a year, or maybe you can take 1 year of university and then take off a year and go to one of these mission projects that you have an interest in. And we have found that many young people that do that, they really get a clear picture of where God is leading them, what special talents God has given them. Sometimes some young people start studying one career, but once they get to the mission field and see the needs, then they realize, no, what I really want to do is something else. And we found that it really is a great advantage to take that 1 year off, and that God can really teach you so much during that time. It can affect the rest of your studies.
Is it advisable to take shorter courses to find courses where you can have a certificate or certain qualifications on a fast track and then do another thing to be a little bit more all around?
Usually I encourage people to take their education like eating an apple. Don't stuff the whole apple in your mouth at once. Take a bite at a time. There are several reasons for that. One is you might change your mind during the studies, and as you get exposed to the mission field, we've had a lot of young people change their major in order to be able to be more appropriate for the needs of where they would like to go. There's also another reason. As we look into the future, very few people can see 5 years into the future today. Things are changing so fast, and if I decide to take an 8-year course of studies, you're just going out into the darkness, and you don't know if you will ever finish. So if we can take your education in smaller pieces, and if as time allows, keep studying, going to the mission field, coming back to study more, go to the mission field, come back and study some more, and if time lasts, you will always finish. And if time is shortened, you will find yourself working on the front lines with what you already have. And so that's what we did. I have 5 professions the Lord has given me, but we did it in pieces. Mission field, back to study. Mission field, back to study. And so we encourage everybody. Education is very important. We would never say that it's not important. It is. Young people must be rightly trained. But it is no longer advisable, in our point of view, to take long courses of study before going to the mission field. Do it in smaller pieces. By the way, the biggest needs in the mission field that we can perceive are medical needs, educational type of studies. Media is very important, because no matter what your profession, you should always learn a little bit about media, because we have a message to communicate to the world. So all Seventh-day Adventists should be communication majors, in addition to whatever else they do.
Another big need that we have is for agriculture and for maintenance. I mean, many times people don't think about that, but
our projects are thirsty for
mechanics. We could really
mechanics.
use some mechanics and other kind of maintenance, construction.
So every practical skill.
Kind of work you think of as honorary, mission work. So you want to be a doctor or a teacher, but hands-on is also this.
If we look at our schools right now, we find a lot of teachers and we find a lot of other specialties, and nobody maintains the vehicle. They're always broken down, and so we have to try to find ways. They would just cry if they could get a good mechanic.
And agriculture, I mean, food prices all over the world are just going up, and that's one of our biggest needs.
Okay. When I read your newsletters, and when I've read them over the last years, I saw that there were very often needs of a lot of money for projects like media, TV stations, and so on. These are sums a normal person has never dealt with. And very often I could see that you were, as you already explained, you were going ahead without having the funds. And quite often you have also experienced that sometimes on the at the last minute, the Lord provided through a way where no one expected the money to come from. But I also saw that this was not always the case. In the recent years, you also experienced that the money was not coming, or the success that seemed to be there was not continuing the same. How did you deal with these situations, or how do you judge if you look at this whole picture?
Well, God has 1,000 ways to provide for our needs, and generally He never uses the same way twice. what He will do for us, like they crossed the Red Sea, Israel crossed the Red Sea, and in the next 3 days they didn't have water. And you say, how can the God who opened the Red Sea not give us water? Well, God is educating us continually. So He shows His mighty power. Now you know He's in control. And then He throws a test back at you again. So as soon as you see God intervene and help you, then He'll let you go through a famine. He lets you go through a difficult. As we look back, we can see that we've been growing constantly. Now, I've been a little silent. I've been writing only every 3 or 4 months for several reasons, mostly because I'm too busy. We are growing too fast for me to have time to deal with normal newsletters. And normal newsletters produce more support, they produce visibility, everybody likes them. I just don't know how to have time to write them. So we just do little video reports and continually put them out. That helps people. Our front page is filled, our webpage, gospelministry.org, is filled with continuing reports, but they don't come all from me. They come from our missionaries on the front lines. There are some times that we have not had the funds, but this has been hard trials. But on the other hand, as we look back, the project didn't fail. In fact, in one of our most difficult times, we got an $800,000 media center built for us when we didn't even have food money. A donor came down and built a media center for us in Bolivia, and we were just hardly having enough money to pay electric bills, and we now have an $800,000 media center. And so we can see God blessing at the very time that you have a trial. So the most important thing, I wanted to, let me borrow from here, I wanted to emphasize, Isaiah 55 is a very interesting chapter. It says, everyone that thirsteth, come to the waters. He that hath no money, that hath come buy and eat, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Now, this is a symbol of what God wants to do. He wants to give you everything you need without money. Now, when we have money, it is a talent we are to administer for God. But what do we do? What do we do if we don't have it? He said, "Come buy and eat, without money, without price." So we've adopted this philosophy: just do what God asks you to do, and He will provide. Your Heavenly Father already knows you have need of these things. And interestingly enough, I do believe that money is not the issue with God. He has plenty of money. We know from Haggai 2:8 that all the silver and all the gold is His, and the cattle on 1,000 hills, according to Matthew 50. But I was preaching in Romania some years ago, and the secretary of the conference stood up right before I preached, and he said, "God has given me a message for David Gates." And I just waited for him to finish his message, and he read the first several verses of Isaiah 45, and he said, "I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that you may know that I am the Lord." Now, and I said, well, I do believe God someday will provide resources sufficient to finish His work. The Holy Spirit will be poured out, but also I have been saying this promise. It's not the only person that told me this, but that was the first time. Then somebody else came and said, "I have a message for you." It's the same verse. And we have felt impressed that God will provide those resources. Well, it's been at least 6 years since I've been saying, someday God will provide. Now, it is not good for us to have much resources. We start to depend on self and be comfortable. This could be fatal, in fact. So it's dangerous spiritually to have resources. That's why it's so hard for rich people to be saved. Because they depend, Jesus said, it's almost impossible, in fact. But because we easily depend on self. But if God were to provide the resources, it would be for a short period of time. It would be to do what has to be done and then pull it back away so that we now have the tools to work with and continue on by faith.
So is this one of the most rewarding things of missionary work, to see in those difficult situations or over the years how God always was there in time and everything grew? Or what else is the very rewarding? What would you say, Becky?
Oh, just to see people accept Jesus, to see their lives change, that is just so rewarding to me. And for them to come up to you later and just say, thank you for being willing to sacrifice and come here and live among us and teach us these things. It's very rewarding.
There's a cost attached.
Yes.
That's the question I wanted to say. What is, maybe the most difficult thing in mission work? Because I know that there are also lives that have been lost, or there is a couple, I think, who was hijacked right now, probably. Maybe
Yes.
you can share a little about these sides.
First, let me back up to the cost of a life lost you mentioned earlier. Our 4-year-old, that 4-year-old son of our chief pilot in Africa. He's a very tall, blonde American, but born in Kenya, speaks Swahili, Kinandi, French, and English, and he was working there in a very high-risk area where malaria was prevalent. His little son got malaria, barely recovered, but he went back, and the second time he got malaria, it was irrecoverable. He died. It's on the internet. You can type it in. If you're having nothing, having it all, or Gary Roberts, and you can find it on the internet, or you can call our ministry or on our webpage, gospelministry.org. You can get free DVDs. But they lost their little boy, and they're still there working. His wife has fragile health, and she's there working as well. In the case of Venezuela, Bob and Neva Norton and our high school, our academy principal, they disappeared a little over 2 years ago. At first, we thought it was an accident. We looked everywhere, search teams, satellite, the best technology, the helicopter of the governor. But later on, from information coming, we became convinced that it was a hijacking, and they're being held. Even recently on our last trip to Venezuela, we had further confirmation that little pieces of information are coming to bear on it, that they are alive and they are being held somewhere. We don't know where. And the message was, we're okay, but don't look for us. And so it was encouraging, but we long to have them back. So I would encourage any of our viewers to pray for Bob, Neva, and Gladys, that God will eventually, in His time, bring them back to us.
That's the only thing we can do right now.
That's correct.
Probably. Yes.
And so the cost is the possibility of death. We have the possibility of hijacking, disappearance. We do have the possibility of loss. We've lost the airplane that was hijacked. We've had another airplane that was wrecked. No fatalities ever. We've never had a fatality, and we're glad. Our airplanes fly nearly 5,000 hours a year, which is like flying 24 hours, 7 months a year. That's a lot of flying. And when you have a lot of flying, and there's a lot of risk. Our chief pilot in Africa, Gary, just told me just a couple days ago in an email that he went into a dangerous area, and he almost was held hostage by the guerrillas. So he risked his life to go bring out a patient, and he was almost held hostage. He would have disappeared in a similar situation. But we know this is the case, but we still do it because Jesus left everything for us. And so we get tired. We suffer loss. We suffer hunger sometimes. Our missionaries sometimes go without. And yet, what she mentioned, the joy of seeing new tribes, new tribal peoples and areas entered. We see people who, in cities, in jungle villages, everywhere, getting to meet the Lord and saying, I was lost, and I now know. So we're looking forward to heaven. Mm-hmm. We can't wait to see Jesus' face. In fact, let me show you one of our newest tools of evangelism.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, yes.
This is very interesting.
Intriguing.
One of our workers in the Philippines used to be he was a guerrilla killer, a sharpshooter. He killed more than 100 people with his rifle. And he was converted finally. And so he now told me when I was there last time, how can I do evangelism? I don't know how to preach. I need some tool. And I remembered the big panel, the solar panels, the batteries, and the video projectors and generators to do evangelism. He said, I can't carry that. It's too heavy. So I looked on the internet and I found new technology. These are little speakers that run on batteries. I'll just plug them in. I'll just turn them on here, and they're pretty powerful. And this is a video projector. I never knew that a video projector could be so little. It's called a Pico LED projector. You can see the light come on there. I will turn it here, and as it boots up, I have a little chip. Right here's a little tiny chip as big as your fingernail. A little micro SD with 32 gigabytes, and I have 30 hours of video on there. Children's programming, the life of Christ, 3 series of sermons, music, and hymns. Let me see if I can just pull up one thing here. But imagine a little tiny battery, a little solar panel, and this little system here. You don't need electricity. You can charge it all from simply the sun, and you can go into these little villages. They've never seen video at all. And I'll just pull up one here. Let's try some nature videos, which are just beautiful. They've never seen snow-covered mountains in these jungles, and so when they see that, they're just stunned with the beauty. Let's just get one right here, and we'll put it on. And this is in a dark in a very dark. I'll do a fast forward here so we can.
We always wonder how small these devices will become in the future.
And you can, if you pull it back, it'll go 2 meters by, like 2 by 3 meters, and all in the palm of your hand. It's incredible. And let me just.
So if people go into the jungle and they are not able to preach themselves, they can just take a backpack with this device.
A backpack, solar panels, and they don't have to come out for months. And it's, and it just runs, and you just charge it with it. So directly the sun is projected at nighttime, and you can run series by all the. We have 7 media centers in the world, and we do recording in each of the media centers, and we bring in our workers that speak dialect. And they record everything in their own dialect. Then we go back and we're putting these little setups all over the Philippines, Africa, and South America. The whole setup costs $500, about 400 euros. The backpack, the solar panel, the battery, the projector, and so on. So for 400 euros, we can outfit a worker that can go throughout and just go from village to village to village, run the whole series for 3 or 4 weeks.
You do that in several languages.
And do it in their own dialect. Of the people, and so we're just grateful to the Lord for the technology that He's given. And let me just turn it off here. And so you can see that today God has placed in our hands media, technology like this, airplanes, satellites, and everything. And I'm just looking forward to seeing the great harvest of souls. And I know that your ministry here, Bible Stream is a wonderful ministry. And I look forward to hearing from you when God provides those resources to get the tools that you need. That ministries everywhere may finish the work, but it will be the Holy Spirit that finishes. But we can depend on God to provide for our needs.
Yes. Maybe we can give our viewers a few information also now. You have several websites, I guess, not only one. You mentioned already one that was Gospel Ministry.
Our main ministry that is kind of like the umbrella for all our ministries in the world, which are about 75 ministries now in the world, if you include the education, the medical work, and the media, is Gospel Ministry with a Y, gospelministry.org, O-R-G. But here in Germany, the biggest project we have in Germany is our Lightchannel TV Germany, and that would be Lightchannel TV, the 2 letters TV.de, and that would be the one here. And if you just change the last 2 letters to RO, you get Romania. The other letters to HU, you get Hungary. NL for Netherlands. So Lightchannel TV. Whatever country that we have something in, and you'll find it.
Okay, and your first TV network was that
the Spanish one?
Red Advenir?
Yeah, Red Advenir, R-E-D, then ADVENIR.org. Red Advenir, and it's in most Latin American countries, it's still the majority. I would say, except for Mexico, which is closer to North America, where 3ABN has a great influence there with their Spanish. Most of Latin America, down south of that, is covered by Red Advenir. And your umbrella website, there you could find also all the links to the others, or don't you have? Gospelministry.org. There you could find the links to others. Would connect you to media centers, to the projects. And if you want to apply as a volunteer to work, like a lot of organizations have positions, but if specifically somebody's interested in joining one of our 75 projects, be it children, medical work, education, or media, gmivolunteers.org. Okay, so maybe you have a last final thought that you want to share with our viewers, something you, Becky, and you, David, want to say to them.
Well, I'd like to tell just a quick little story, because I believe with all my heart that there is a storm coming on our world. And Mrs. White was shown in vision that there was a storm, relentless in its fury. And I believe so strongly that we need to get ready now. About 10 years ago, my sister-in-law invited me to go on a little camping trip with some of the members of our church. And so we're going to drive to Missouri, to a river, and take some canoes, find a nice little beach to camp, and then head on downriver, and we would have another car at the other end waiting for us. And so as I was packing up, I thought, just in case my canoe were to tip over, I better make sure that my Bible is well protected.
Okay.
And so I put it in a Ziploc plastic bag and then put it in one more Ziploc bag just to make sure. Well, it was a beautiful day when we headed out in our canoes, and just, sunshiny, and the river was just kind of this lazy little river, clear water. You could see the fish, and the birds were singing, and it was just so beautiful. And we found a nice little place for our campground, set up our tents and had a nice fire, and just were really enjoying it. Well, during the night it started to rain, and it rained, and we woke up in the morning, everything kind of dripping, and we noticed that the river had come up quite a ways. Well, we ate breakfast, and by the time we'd finished breakfast, it had gone up some more.
Oh.
And so our leader was like, you know what, I think we better get out of here. This is not looking too good, because the river was no longer a gentle little river. The water was just rushing by, and it was kind of murky by now. So we packed up everything in our canoes, and I thought to myself, you know what, I better tie our luggage to the crossbars on the canoe, just in case it tips over. Well, everybody in our group had the zip-up life jackets, except for my sister-in-law, and she had one of those big bulky ones, that you just tie, and she said, I'm a good swimmer. I think I'll just sit on my life jacket. I'm sure I can grab it really quickly.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, we headed off down the river.
Speedy.
And my son and her son were in a canoe behind us. And we noticed this big log in the river. And so we were trying to shout back to them, "Watch out! There's a log in the river. Go to the right." But they weren't paying any attention to us. They were trying to spray water on someone else in another canoe. And so we kept shouting, "Watch out, go to the right, go to the right. There's this big log in the river." So finally they got the message. Well, when we turned around, to our horror, we realized that we had not been paying attention. We had not kept our eyes on our leader, who was up ahead, and realized that the river just made a sharp curve to the left. And right in front of it was this big stone cliff. And we quickly tried to make that turn, but it was too late. And we just crashed into that cliff, and we were thrown out of the canoe. Well, I could not believe the force of that water. It was just pushing me around like a little rag doll. And finally I was able to get to the side, and I looked around for my sister-in-law, and I didn't see her anywhere. And then I saw my boys coming, and I just started to pray that the Lord would watch over them. Well, our canoe, I looked down the other way and realized that the leader had looked back and realized what was happening, and he was rescuing our runaway canoe. My flip-flops had flown off when I got thrown into the water, and I saw one floating by, and I quickly grabbed it. The other one I never saw again. But just as my boys came by, they made it okay, and I was so thankful. And when they came to shore, here I realized that my sister-in-law was hanging on to their canoe. Well, come to find out, when she was thrown in the water, the life jacket was the last thing on her mind. At that point, she didn't even think about it, and she got down kind of in this whirlpool, and she was just going round and round, just sucked down. She fought her way up to the top, only to be sucked down again. And then she realized what a serious situation she was in, and she just cried out to the Lord and said, "Lord, please save me." And as she came desperately up to the surface, right then our boys came by, and she was able to grab that canoe and go out. And we just thanked the Lord. But from that experience, I learned several things. Number one, we need to keep our eyes on our leader. We can't be looking off. Like Hebrews said, it's keep your eyes on Jesus. He is the author and finisher of our faith. And the other thing is, you have to prepare beforehand for a crisis, for a storm. You can't wait till that last minute. To try to put on your life jacket at that moment, it's too late. Things happen so fast. And I believe that God's Word is like our life jacket. And we have to be hiding this in our heart so that we will not sin against God. If we try to wait till the big temptations come, it's going to be too late. Think of Jesus when he had to go into the desert. If he hadn't already been committing those verses to memory, he wouldn't have been able to be victorious over the devil. And so we need to do the same thing right now. We need to be hiding God's Word in our heart. And the other thing is that when we cry out to God, he will save us. And I'm just so thankful for that. And, you know, as we looked at my canoe, turned it over, because I had tied all those things to the crossbars, everything was still there. And I quickly opened the backpack and got out my precious Bible, and it was dry because I had put it in the plastic bag. Now my camera, I don't know why I didn't think to put my camera in a plastic bag, and it was totally ruined, but it just taught me that we have to be ready before those things happen. And I just want to encourage whoever may be watching this today to hide God's Word in your heart. Be prepared. As Mrs. White said, only those who have fortified their minds will be ready for the great crisis.
Thank you, Becky. That was such a nice illustration, such an important thought. David, you also want to say something to our viewers, I think.
Well, similar to Becky, I have a great conviction that we're living at the very edge of time. In Matthew 24:32, Jesus said, "Hear the parable of the fig tree. When its branch is tender and it puts out its leaves, you know that it is summertime. And so likewise, when the coming of the Son of Man, it's even at the door. It's so close." And so we are to know what's happening, to read what's happening. And I believe we're living not only in the last generation. I believe that we're living at the very, very edge where in blinding speed, we're going to be surprised, similar to with the story that she said. And in Matthew 25, Jesus followed that up with the story of the 10 virgins. And the sad thing is, even though we work with peoples and that don't know Christ anywhere in the jungles and on television, and atheists and Buddhists, and we just started broadcasting in Indonesia recently to the largest Muslim country in the world. We're used to working, but I personally speak mainly to the church members, and when I speak, and Jesus said that all of a sudden there's going to be a cry made. The bridegroom is coming. Let us go forth to meet him. Seventh-day Adventists and other Christians are going to wake up suddenly to the fact that we are at the very end of time. The sad thing is that it's too late to get oil in your lamp. You have already prepared, or you have not prepared, and it's too late to find oil. That this is the moment. I would appeal to our viewers to seriously analyze. If you're comfortable, something is wrong. God is not putting people in comfortable positions. If you're uncomfortable, you can thank God that He's trying to teach you to trust Him more. Let's just learn to follow. In fact, that vision that Sister White had walking along the cliff, and it got more narrow and more narrow. We had to leave things behind. That's what's happening now. If for some reason we're on a path to accumulate, we're on the wrong path. We are to be on the most narrow path, constantly letting go and trusting God more and holding on to the cord. This is exactly the lessons we need to learn. More trust in God. Allow God to take us through difficult and increasingly difficult circumstances and continue to trust anyway until we have the faith of Jesus. Jesus trusted His Father even if He didn't understand. And it's time for us to trust. You asked me earlier, when you aren't able to pay the bills, then what? That's what it's all about. Am I going to trust anyway, or am I going to say, oh, well, if the money's not there, I'm going to lose my trust in God? Then I failed the test. I have to learn to trust anyway. Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him, Job said. So I would like to appeal to our viewers, those that consider themselves Christian especially, and those that believe they're prepared, to analyze their life and make sure there's no love of the world, no love of things, and learn to trust God more. And we so long to see His face and hear the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." But today is a day of preparation, and not to put it off until tomorrow. And so I hope these things that we have talked about today will be an encouragement to those that are in the process of learning that difficult times are ahead, but God will take us through each of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for these encouraging words. And I think they will be an inspiration for many. And I hope also, and I pray that your ministry will be blessed and will continue to be a blessing for many people. Thank you for being here with us. This was Bibelstream now, and this was our interview time. I hope you have enjoyed it, and see you next time soon.